Hey everyone, and welcome to DePaul Esports' final summer career chat. My name is Alex Rodriguez, and today we're joined with Rosemary Kelley, aka Nekkra. She's the professional esports host and commentator for the Pokemon Video Game Championship, Overwatch, Hearthstone, and several other video games. Rosemary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me and having me as a part of this series. This is really awesome.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much for being here. And everyone, we just saw right before we started was the DePaul Minecraft server. They just had a revamp. Everything's brand new, and they're doing all sorts of events. Go ahead and check them out just at discord.gg/DePaul Esports. And just as a reminder for everyone, if you have a question for me or Rosemary, feel free to just drop a comment, be it in Facebook or Twitch, and we'll try to get to it ASAP. Awesome. So just to kind of get into things, Rosemary, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved within like casting and hosting within the esports industry.
Yeah, so as you guys have already heard, my name is Rosemary Kelley, otherwise known as Nekkra, and I got started in esports actually in November of 2018. So my career is not even 2 years old yet, but it's been a whirlwind and a roller coaster so far.
Absolutely. And even though you might be relatively new to this scene, that doesn't say a lot because you have had like a huge amount of experience there. I mean, the Pokemon Championship is huge, so really congrats on that.
Thank you so much. It's been fun. It's been a fun and challenging road, but it definitely comes with its rewards.
Absolutely, I'd imagine. When did you first decide you wanted to cast events in the industry?
So it actually happened as kind of a more visceral experience. I went to my very first BlizzCon in November or the end of October of 2018, and I saw what everybody was doing in esports, and I just thought it was super, super cool. I hadn't necessarily known about esports up until that point. Like, I competed. I had done some Hearthstone competitions. I had competed in Overwatch, but I didn't necessarily know it as esports up until I saw what was happening at BlizzCon, seeing the StarCraft Championships, the Overwatch World Cup, and all of these amazing esports shows and tournaments and competitions. And that's when I realized I could do that at some point. Maybe not as a player because I hadn't made it super far in my career, but as one of the commentators or host, I just thought that role was super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, I mean, there's so many viewers, there's even less players, and there's even less casters. So it's such a unique experience that you must be having. Could you tell us like a little bit about that and what it's like to be a caster?
It's been a challenge. So it definitely, as one of the newer casters to the scene, it's a lot harder to maybe make a name for yourself or get into the role. But it's been really, really fun. It's been such a rewarding experience in terms of getting a chance to travel all over the world. I've been asked to go to Brazil, Australia as a part of the Pokemon Video Game Championships, and having those experiences and meeting all sorts of different types of people. That's the best part.
Okay, cool. That sounds awesome. And I know you said you like kind of didn't know about the esports industry before you went to BlizzCon. What did you know about it before that, just off the top of your head, if you remember?
I I didn't really know much. Like when I went to college, esports didn't necessarily have like paths that you could follow in your collegiate studies, or there weren't really clubs for esports. So I didn't know much to be completely honest with you.
Right, that makes sense. It's definitely like an emerging industry, and it's been getting like bigger and bigger, and it's kind of crazy how much bigger it's gotten. And I think
Mhm.
especially with everything going on, it's really been highlighted, especially recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did anything in your education process within college? I know you said it wasn't big for esports, but were you able to kind of get skills that you'd be using for casting during college, or anything uh, that like benefited you later on?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually didn't go to school to get an esports degree or in broadcasting or anything like that. I actually went to school thinking I was going to go into academia. So I studied geochemistry, and I also studied ecology and evolutionary biology, and came out with a bachelor's in science. So I actually developed a lot of really great skills from those kinds of avenues, like critical thinking, having to be able to analyze and reproduce that as a part of talking through your papers and your posters and things like that. And those public speaking skills, along with the critical thinking, I think really allowed me to get on the right path of figuring out how to talk about video games, funny enough.
Right, that absolutely makes sense. And did those public speaking skills kind of come after you were a caster, or did you kind of have them before? I know for me, I have terrible public speaking unless it's virtually. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that.
I definitely have stage fright still. That's not something that I think goes away super easily. I was even nervous actually coming on to talk to everybody here. But the funny thing I think is that, going through college, it definitely has a lot of opportunities for you to engage in public speaking. So whether it's talking about your school projects or going to conferences and talking about your papers and your research that you were able to do, a lot of those experiences definitely helped in order to get that public speaking skill elevated, but it's still something you have to work on every single day.
No, absolutely. That makes complete sense. It's also just kind of like the knowledge of being able to talk about the game, and kind of bouncing off that, when you're asked to like cast a game or host something, do you try to stick to games like you that you're already familiar with, or if someone came to a game that you weren't so familiar with, would you like take time to learn it? How do you usually handle that?
Yeah, so when I first started out, it was very focused on Overwatch. I had actually just gotten off of coaching for a team. I had played on a team myself, and I was very competitive with the game. And I had an opportunity to cast some of the games that came up for the tournament that I was playing in, and I was just like, "Oh, this is really, really fun." This actually happened like right before I had gone to BlizzCon, so everything kind of snowballed out of control from there. I was casting the game, and then I saw actual commentators at BlizzCon that were doing the job that I was just starting to practice. And I tend to try to stick to games that I know in terms of actually having played them competitively. So I've played Pokemon video game championships, I've been a part of the Hearthstone circuit, and I've also, played Overwatch competitively on a team. So I've tried to stick to those kinds of titles, but someone came up to me and they were like, "Hey, do you cast PUBG?" And I was like, "No, but I can learn."
Right.
And so I was able to build up the knowledge from that video game and translate that over to actually casting it. And I try to do the same when I'm hosting as well.
That's awesome, and that adaptability I think is really difficult, but like you really have a good talent for that, clearly.
Thanks a
uh,
lot.
cool. What's something that you wish you had known about like casting before you entered the esports industry?
I think I would have liked to know that there's no sense in trying to please everybody.
Right.
I think that casting, much like art, is very subjective. There are people that are going to love your casting. There are people that are simply going to just not have a taste for it, and that's okay. And I think that's something that you definitely have to be okay with when you're entering the industry, knowing that there might be someone in chat that doesn't like your casting, and be vocal about it. And also, don't read chat because it's not helpful.
Yeah.
But I think that would be the number one piece of advice: is just be yourself, and don't worry about the people that are jealous about the position that you're in.
Absolutely, I can imagine that, especially when chat's like flying by, and you never know who's talking there. I completely understand that. How do you think the esports industry has adapted or changed as a result of COVID-19?
It's gone very virtual, which is so, so cool. A lot of there are some drawbacks to that as well, but I think especially for people that are trying to get into the industry, having this more open virtual world that you can be a part of is so welcoming to newer talent and newer people that want to get into the position, because you get a chance to do it from your own home. You don't have to actually travel anywhere. People aren't paying you to travel anywhere, so it's a lot easier for you to get your foot in the door.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been great. Like for me, I mean, as a viewer and like a somewhat competitor, it's been great. Like how everything's moved remote. I curiosity, how has like casting been remote? Do you have like the equipment and everything you would need normally?
I do have the equipment because I also like to stream. But the other thing about that is it's so much harder, especially when you're not right next to the person that you're trying to talk to or trying to interact with. Like when you're working in a LAN environment or just an offline workspace, it's so much easier because you have your partner sitting right next to you. So it's really easy to show off physical cues of, "I'm done talking,
Mhm.
you can go," or "I'm finished with my thought, I have no more questions to ask." And you guys can vibe off of each other so much better than an online environment. So it's been a challenge to adjust to.
Right, absolutely. I'd imagine. I would think, would it be likewise also for like having a crowd in front of you and having that like natural esports hype around it?
The crowd goes wild. It's such an invigorating experience to have a crowd that you can listen and respond to. You hear the crowd go wild, you in turn get hype, and you can really embolden those moments that are super special and super impactful in someone's play.
Absolutely, and it's really like bouncing hype off each other, and it really like builds up everything, you know.
A hundred
So
percent.
I'd imagine it would be difficult to kind of do that from your own home, but I mean, it would be a lot of change. But I think the esports industry has kind of adapted really well to it.
Yeah, you need to know the games a lot better in order to be able to build up the hype and build up the experience for the people that are watching at home.
Absolutely. Kind of moving off that, where do you see esports and I guess casting, especially being like 5 years? Do you think it's going to get bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I think everybody's hoping that esports as a whole is going to be more mainstream than it already is. I'm seeing things like esports pop up on your general television channels is so cool, but having even just a network dedicated to esports or the more popular tournaments that are happening and shows that can get you up on all the news, I think that's where we're heading in a couple of years.
I agree. That will be awesome. And I think, I mean, even as of now, being able to Google like a certain like team and seeing it pop up in like the Google result, just like any other sport's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Obviously, being on like ESPN and everything, it's definitely moving in that same direction, as you said. We do have one question from Courtney James. She says, "Do you have any advice for females identifying students that may be looking to shoutcast?"
Yes. I say just don't worry about the haters. There's a lot that goes into being a female in the esports community. And a lot of positives and there are a lot of negatives. And I think that the one thing is that you can always find people that you can trust and lean on. So make sure you have those friends that are in your corner to help support you through those tougher times.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. It's good to always like make connections and everything like that. What is it like to cast like super large events such as like Pokemon VGC or some of your Overwatch stuff? Was that like was it tricky to like kind of get used to that experience?
I remember when my first cast that I did wasn't very good. to just put that out there, but the other thing about it was a very small audience. It was for a community of a smaller Overwatch community, so everybody knew each other, and you knew the players that were actually competing in those tournaments. So moving from that kind of environment to a more worldwide stage, that took a lot of getting used to, especially because it's just a much bigger audience, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. You can't please everybody,
Right.
and that was something that you just kind of have to remember when you're going through the larger audiences. It's like there's more people that might not like you when you're going to be talking to a larger audience. So just definitely some challenges and hurdles to overcome in that regard.
Definitely, that does make sense. And before those different like arena sizes, do you kind of prep differently, or do you kind of go in with like the same battle plan?
No, I actually do prep a lot differently. So if I know it's going to be a smaller stream and I know that it's going to be more tailored to a community audience, I definitely try to put a little bit more prep and time into the people that are going to be involved versus like going for more broader storylines for a larger audience because they might not know the same type of people. But you put in the same amount of prep work, I think, regardless of the type of stream that you're doing.
Right, that does make sense. Just kind of allocate it a little differently there.
Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, just one last reminder for everyone, just before we kind of start closing things up, just make sure you guys leave comments, anything on Twitch or Facebook, feel free to drop them and we'll try to get to them. Cool. So kind of looking into DePaul upcoming students, I kind of split this into two questions. What piece of advice would you have for DePaul students looking to start competing? I know you said you had experience competing with Overwatch, and I just kind of wanted to branch off that a little.
Just do it. I think that the similar answer to, if you want to start competing or if you want to start broadcasting or being a part of a stream, I just do it and put yourself out there. I think one of the great things about colleges now getting involved into esports a lot more is that there's so many more opportunities for students to participate on an Overwatch team or be on a Hearthstone team or get a chance to actually compete in the esports sphere. And similarly, there's a lot more opportunities coming through when you have your own Twitch, because that means you can broadcast those matches and you can get students involved that want to start to learn how to shoutcast. So it's super exciting to have these opportunities popping up at colleges all across the country, because you are giving them the best stage that they could have, a safe environment to work on their craft and before they move out into the big world.
So that's great advice, just to do it, especially on Twitch. I mean, it's such a great way to kind of get your voice out. Out of curiosity, when you started Twitch, were you already started casting, or did you do like Twitch kind of before that as well?
I actually did Twitch before that. So when I was competing, I was also a Twitch streamer. It took me 3 years to get to the point where my Twitch is now, but it's definitely been a process.
That's awesome. How was that like kind of starting out? Was it difficult to pick up traction, or did you kind of jump in and have success right off the bat?
No, definitely not. So like it took me 3 years of streaming on Twitch to actually hit partner, which is where I am now. I think the best advice that I could give to somebody that wants to start out on like their own stream career or something like that is be consistent, be yourself, and also be okay with those streams where even if you have an audience of 1 or 2 people, stream like you are streaming to an audience of 300 or 400 people. That's probably the best advice I could give.
Yeah, that's definitely great advice. And obviously you said you've been doing it for like 3 years. I think a level of resilience there is also kind of needed.
It's been on and off. So there have definitely been times where I've been less motivated or busy in terms of not being able to stream or put my whole self forward, and that's okay. Be okay with allowing yourself to have some time off, and especially if you have a more popular stream. Like mine's definitely not at that point where I'm streaming to like thousands and thousands of people, but just be okay with having that ability to say I can take a break.
Right, absolutely. Do you suggest maybe sticking to like a schedule for the most part, obviously aside from breaks, or do you think just kind of freelance, pop on whenever?
No, I think that the larger streamers can do that because they have a little bit more liberty with, being able to have that audience's flexibility. But if you're just starting out, I definitely recommend setting aside some really tangible goals for yourself, and also putting aside a stream schedule. So maybe even having just like a daily time that you're able to start is a great way to get people to come back at the same time. And it's also a great way for you to advertise, guess what, guys? I'm going live again tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern or something like that. And just know that you have that schedule set aside for yourself.
Absolutely. Definitely great advice there. So kind of going back to like advice for DePaul students, what would you say for someone looking to enter casting? Is there like a set of skills that you think that would be really useful if they pick up now, kind of going into casting or something like that in the future?
Public speaking skills, definitely a number one thing. You're going to be casting in front of an audience, and you're going to be talking in front of a lot of people. I also suggest reading. I don't have the biggest vocabulary in the world, but something that I've been also trying to do is just expand my vernacular. So looking at reading a lot more and picking up some more synonyms for things that I would commonly use so that my vocabulary is a little bit more varied is definitely something that I would suggest.
Right. Absolutely. No, that does make sense. Well, one question I have, and I've always wondered about casters, is when there's like not a particularly interesting thing going on at the game at that one time, how do you think of kind of things to bring up and talk about? Do you have those like pre-planned out ahead?
No, you actually don't. But the great thing, I guess sometimes you could, especially depending on the synergy that you have with your partner. But I always like to think of it as a dial in casting. So you have kind of on that dial entertainment value, and then you also have more of that analysis and a game-oriented talk. So if something more or less uninteresting is happening in the game, maybe you've got some downtime in the match, or it's a really, really full stomp, I like to turn that dial a little bit more towards entertainment. And it's a lot easier to do with someone that you're familiar with, because you can banter back and forth about anything, literally anything.
Right.
Like what was happening in the world a couple of weeks ago. Everything was cake. So bring that up on stream and talk about whether or not the characters are cake or something like that. And it ends up being really fun and really entertaining. Maybe a little cringy, but I think I can be a cringy person at times, and I know this about myself. But don't be afraid to bring that side of your personality to a cast, and you never know who's gonna really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely has a place, and it's great to just fill up time. It's definitely good advice. So if anyone's streaming and you have something to say, bring up some cake or something.
Everything is cake.
Absolutely. Cool. So we have one question from Tom. He says, how many members are involved in the production teams you work with on tournaments? What roles behind the scenes do you think viewers aren't aware of?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. There's so many different roles that take place. So I'll talk to you a little bit about like the production team and like the tournament side of things as well, because there's two huge facets of working on tournaments that you need to kind of think about. So I'll talk about the tournament side first. You've got organizers, you have a lot of staff that work tirelessly and honestly, really thanklessly behind the scenes to make sure that you're having a good time with the tournament. And like, please thank your TOs. They love doing this stuff for you, and they're definitely the people that are even like they're making this even happen. So make sure you thank your tournament organizers. They would greatly appreciate it. And then on the broadcast side of things, you have your producer, so the person that's hitting the buttons. You have an in-game observer that's actually looking at the game and sitting in there with the players, actually getting the action that you see on screen. You might have multiple observers in that case, getting different angles and putting it all together in like a multicam environment. And then usually have two shoutcasters. Sometimes you might have three, but typically you're seeing like a play-by-play caster and then a color caster. And then you also have moderators. My goodness, are moderators the best thing to ever happen? And everybody should consider that as a necessary role in the team. It helps so that you can moderate your chat, and you can also make sure that you actually have rules for what is okay to say in chat and what's not okay. Moderators are great. That's also a very thankless position. Please make sure you thank your moderators too.
Absolutely. There's definitely so much that goes behind the scenes. I mean, just kind of when you said that, I was kind of thinking about how this all pieces together, and I never
Yeah.
really thought about that. It's definitely awesome. Would you ever consider like taking a role in any of the other spots, or do you kind of want to stick to casting mostly?
I have. So I've actually done quite a bit. When I was in my first year, I was trying everything, and I actually suggest to everybody, try it all. You never know what you're going to fall in love with. You might go into the world of esports thinking, I want to be a caster, and I'll caveat that with like, yes, casting is amazing, but there's a lot of other jobs that need to get done in order to have esports function as a community and as a wonderful place to be. And you never know if that is going to be at being a tournament organizer or being a producer or an in-game observer or any of these other amazing roles that need to be filled. There's even more that go into like esports teams. You've got people that do PR, you have social media, you also have people that are agents and talent managers and broadcast directors. Like, holy cow, the world is your oyster when it comes down to roles that you can fill in esports. So try it all. I've been a broadcast director, a talent manager, tournament organizer, moderator. I tried everything before I found that casting was the thing that I was getting the most success in and the most feedback for. So I went in that direction.
Absolutely. And kind of with all those different roles, I mean, it kind of goes to show that no matter what you're studying, you can always kind of find something that you can kind of channel what you've learned and your skills into, be it business,
Yeah,
be it playing, anything like that.
for sure. Oh,
It's
I
really awesome.
even forgot about sales. Like, there's so many different things that you can do in esports, and I think that's the great thing about getting a degree like that wasn't necessarily like super pinpointed at just some one thing in specific. It's like, and even if you do, there's so many opportunities for you to kind of change your path. So like, don't be afraid of going in a wrong direction. I don't think there's a wrong direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely some great advice. And I agree with you. I mean, it's just awesome how like huge the team is and how many people have to kind of come together to make everything work like magic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Just as we wait for maybe some last comment questions, out of curiosity, what is your favorite Pokemon team comp? I couldn't help but notice the backdrop and
Oh, this? Yeah, my current composition that I'm using right now, and what's really interesting about the video game championships is we actually just implemented bans for the very first time.
Okay.
So there's Pokemon that you're legitimately not allowed to use, that should be normally used Pokemon. Like for right now, when we're talking about Sword and Shield, what's banned is like Cinderace, Rillaboom, Togekiss, Tyranitar, Porygon 2, Magnezone, Indeedee, and a couple of others. But so right now I'm using Pretty similar sand team to what I was using before, but that's my favorite archetype. But it includes Gigalith and Durant, if that gives you any idea of what shenanigans are going on there.
That's awesome. I'm like a complete newbie. I mean, I haven't really been into the Pokemon game since like Diamond Pearl. Now I play very casually. I remember when I played, like Spiritomb was like really broken. I'm not sure. So did they not have bans back then? Was that like a newer thing they've added?
So they've always had like a format, and with the format, maybe there's like restricted Pokemon that you might only be able to have one of on your team, or you can't have mythicals or things like that. But yeah, so a ban list is definitely very, very new, given that we have rotating series of competitions. So we're in Series 6 right now, and that's what came with Series 6 was a ban list. We had no idea.
That makes sense. Yeah. Don't know. I was going to stack like six Arceuses or whatever.
Yeah.
So
definitely can only have one Arceus on your team if it's ever allowed.
Doesn't sound like the best. Awesome. Well, that's pretty much everything. It looks like our comments have kind of slowed down a little bit. But yeah, Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for tuning in and watching.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me again. It's been a real pleasure.
Great. Absolutely. And we just have like a quick little shout out to your Twitch, I believe. So if you want to have like a quick plug or anything like that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, so that's my social media handle. You can find me at Nekkra Gaming on Twitter, and then everywhere else like YouTube, Twitch, Instagram. I'm trying to get the handle Nekkra everywhere, but I've only been able to secure it on those 3 platforms so far. Twitter, please, just kidding. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me. My DMs are open. If Discord's more your speed, that's Nekkra5555. So you guys can always find me on there. And if you guys have any questions, then don't hesitate to ask.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. Everyone go check her out for sure. But yeah, that's about everything. Thanks so much, guys. See you guys later.